Did the Cleveland Browns just sabotage their own season, all because of one stubborn decision? One that the entire stadium, every analyst, and even their own players could see coming from miles away? The cameras told the story without saying a word. Shedeur Sanders standing silent on the sidelines, helmet strapped, eyes locked forward, while Dillon Gabriel's performance collapsed live on national television. Fans weren't just frustrated, they were furious. You could feel it through the screen, the disbelief, the anger, the sense that the coaching staff was watching the same disaster unfold and doing absolutely nothing about it. But this wasn't just another Sunday meltdown. What happened in that game may have just exposed something much bigger. A broken system inside Cleveland's organization, one that values pride over performance, loyalty over logic. And once you see how deep it goes, you'll realize this game wasn't just a loss. It was the moment everything started to unravel. From the very first snap, something about Cleveland's offense just felt wrong. The energy was off, the rhythm was gone, and every fan watching, whether inside MetLife Stadium or glued to their screens at home, could sense it. Dillon Gabriel looked lost before the game had even settled into its first drive. The Jets weren't doing anything revolutionary. They were running basic defensive schemes, simple reads, nothing Cleveland hadn't practiced 1,000 times. And yet Dillon missed the easiest throws on the field. Overthrown slants, checkdowns tossed into the dirt, wide open routes that never had a chance. Then came that moment of silence, the kind that spreads through a stadium when everyone collectively realizes what they're witnessing isn't just a slow start, it's the beginning of a breakdown. Commentators stopped mid-sentence, unsure how to justify what they were seeing. Fans groaned so loud you could hear it echo through the broadcast. And as the Jets capitalized, scoring again and again, the camera cut to Shedeur Sanders, helmet on, chin strapped tight, standing there completely still, eyes locked forward, like he was already in the game. He wasn't shouting, he wasn't sulking, just waiting. That quiet confidence hit harder than any word he could have said. It wasn't backup frustration, it was controlled readiness. Meanwhile, Gabriel's throws became wilder, his pocket presence shakier, his decisions slower. At one point, Cleveland's wide receiver ran a perfect route, wide open, only to turn around and find the ball sailing 8 yards over his head. He clapped his hands in disbelief, not at the coverage, not at himself, but at his quarterback. The cameras caught it all. The frustration, the disbelief, and the unspoken truth on every player's face. This wasn't going to end well. From that moment on, the crowd's energy shifted completely. Every incomplete pass drew louder boos. Every stalled drive fueled louder chants. The tension built like a storm that everyone could feel coming, except, apparently, the coaching staff. Because while the entire stadium could see the problem, the man who could fix it kept his helmet on and his mouth shut. And that silence said everything. It started subtle, a missed read here, a delayed throw there. But by the second quarter, the cracks in Cleveland's offense had split wide open. Dillon Gabriel wasn't just struggling anymore, he was unraveling. Every snap looked heavier than the last. His feet wouldn't settle. His eyes darted nervously between receivers. And his passes, they weren't just inaccurate, they were desperate. The Jets' defense, ranked near the bottom of the league, suddenly looked elite, not because they'd improved overnight, but because Cleveland was self-destructing in real time. Then came that drive, 3rd and goal. The Browns were still within striking distance, the crowd clinging to the last bit of hope left. Gabriel took the snap, glanced right, panicked, and fired into triple coverage, a throw that never should have left his hand. The ball was picked off instantly. The Jets' sideline exploded in celebration, but the stadium didn't. Instead, it was drowned out by boos. Not polite frustration, full-blown, fed-up outrage. Fans weren't just reacting to the interception, they were reacting to the stubbornness behind it. And as the Jets defenders jogged off with the ball, cameras panned to Shedeur Sanders once again. Helmet still strapped, visor reflecting the chaos, standing there a few feet behind Coach Stefanski. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. You could read his lips as clearly as if he'd shouted it. "Let me go win this." Stefanski's response? A small shake of the head. The moment passed, and with it, the last trace of faith the crowd had left. That was the breaking point. Not just for fans, but for the players, too. The frustration was visible. Sideline tension, heads shaking, teammates avoiding eye contact with their own quarterback. Even analysts watching from home couldn't believe what they were seeing. "This is organizational malpractice," one tweet read, and within seconds it was everywhere. Social media lit up instantly. "Play Shedeur. Start the kid. We're wasting a playoff roster on pride." The narrative had shifted in real time, and everyone watching knew it. This wasn't just a bad game. This was the moment the Browns' season, and maybe their locker room, started to spiral. And as the boos kept raining down, one thought echoed louder than all the noise. Shedeur Sanders could have won that game. When the final whistle blew, the chaos on the field carried straight into the locker room. Only this time it was silent. That heavy, suffocating kind of silence that says more than yelling ever could. Players filed in one by one, heads down, helmets dropped against metal lockers with dull, echoing thuds. Dillon Gabriel sat alone, elbows on knees, eyes fixed on the floor. Nobody sat beside him. Nobody said a word. It wasn't anger anymore. It was resignation. The kind of quiet that comes when a team collectively realizes something has to change. Reports later claimed that the divide inside that locker room was impossible to ignore. Veteran players, the ones who've seen every kind of loss, were done pretending. One offensive starter, described as a locker room leader, supposedly told a reporter, "When number 12 steps in, we expect to score. When number 8 steps in, we just hope to survive." That quote spread like wildfire online. But what mattered most was that it didn't sound like frustration. It sounded like truth.
Then came the moment that sealed it. Shedeur Sanders walked in, headphones on, calm, collected. He didn't speak to the cameras, didn't glance at anyone. He didn't need to. The contrast between him and Gabriel was night and day. One broken, the other unshaken. Teammates noticed. Some even nodded as he passed. Quiet acknowledgments that the team's confidence had already shifted. Behind closed doors, tension simmered. Multiple insiders claimed that several veterans, including offensive linemen and key skill players, privately approached the coaching staff that evening. Their message was simple, direct, and impossible to misinterpret. Start Shedeur or risk losing the locker room completely. It wasn't a request, it was a warning. For players, football is about trust. Trust in your coach, in your teammates, in your quarterback. But that night, Cleveland lost all three. The locker room wasn't just divided, it was exhausted. They were tired of watching a season slip away because of one man's stubbornness. Tired of pretending that loyalty was more important than winning. And while Coach Stefanski tried to keep control, talking about evaluations and sticking to the plan in post-game interviews, the reality inside those four walls was brutally simple. The team had already made its choice. They knew who their leader was. They knew who could save the season. And for the first time, they weren't afraid to say it out loud. Because when an entire locker room stops believing in the guy under center, the controversy isn't coming. It's already here. The locker room might have gone quiet, but the internet? It exploded. Within minutes of the final whistle, the Cleveland Browns weren't just trending, they were the story of the night. Every highlight clip, every missed throw, every sideline shot of Shedeur Sanders staring into the field became instant viral fuel. It wasn't just fans talking, it was the entire sports world watching a meltdown unfold in real time. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, you couldn't scroll without seeing it. Hashtags like Start Shedeur and hashtag Play the Kid shot up the charts, pulling in millions of impressions within hours. One viral clip stitched together Shedeur's calm, focused demeanor beside Gabriel's panicked decision-making. The contrast was devastating. It looked like two different teams playing on the same sideline. The caption beneath it summed up what everyone was thinking. One's ready, one's not. Former players joined in too. Shannon Sharp tweeted, "If Shedeur Sanders gets those reps, Cleveland wins by 2 scores. Simple." Retweets piled up like wildfire. Another ex-Brown posted cryptically, "QB1 wasn't holding a clipboard today, he was holding the season together." That line alone had fans quoting it across every platform, turning it into a rallying cry. And it wasn't just the pros. Fans were relentless. Hundreds of threads debated why Stefanski refused to make the switch. Some accused him of ego, others of politics. A few even suggested, half-jokingly, that he'd rather lose his job than admit he made a mistake. The wildest part? Those theories didn't sound far-fetched anymore. By midnight, the story had transcended sports commentary. It was trending on mainstream news sites. Headlines read like breaking scandal pieces. Cleveland in crisis. Fans demand Shedeur Sanders after Gabriel collapse. Locker room revolt. Browns players losing faith in coaching staff. YouTube clips flooded the algorithm. Reaction videos, fan rants, and highlight breakdowns titled things like "The moment Shedeur should have played" or "How the Browns threw away their season in one game." Comment sections filled with angry paragraphs, people pleading for change, fans calling it the most obvious quarterback mistake in the NFL this year. But the post that truly broke the internet came from a fan sitting front row at MetLife. They posted a photo, Shedeur Sanders standing behind Stefanski, helmet on, jaw tight, eyes forward, with one caption: "He's not waiting for his chance. He's waiting for them to realize he's already earned it." That single tweet got over 3.5 million views overnight. It wasn't just content, it was a message. The fan base had picked their side. And while Cleveland's social team tried to play damage control with generic posts about team unity and sticking together, the comments told the real story. The fans weren't buying it. They didn't want unity. They wanted accountability.
Because by now, this wasn't just about a bad game. It was about leadership. It was about pride. And most of all, it was about a young quarterback who hadn't thrown a single pass that night, yet somehow managed to win over the entire football world. And the deeper you looked into the reaction, the clearer it became. This wasn't going away. The internet had spoken, and Cleveland couldn't silence it. The controversy had gone public, and what came next would test the Browns' leadership like never before. Inside the Browns facility, the walls were closing in. By Monday morning, the viral storm had turned into a full-blown organizational earthquake. Local reporters circled the team complex like vultures, cameras ready, waiting for a single comment that could confirm what everyone already suspected, that Cleveland was crumbling from the top down. Coach Kevin Stefanski, once praised for his steady hand and discipline, suddenly looked like the most stubborn man in football. And the worst part? His players knew it. Behind the scenes, things weren't calm. Multiple insiders claimed that the coaching staff held an emergency evaluation meeting the very next day, a polite way of saying damage control. They reviewed film, stats, press reactions, everything. The numbers were unforgiving. 17 completions on 32 attempts, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a quarterback rating that would make any fan wince. But even after seeing the evidence, Stefanski reportedly stood firm. His message was short: we stay the course. That single phrase, stay the course, hit the locker room like a gut punch. Players had spent the night defending themselves online, dodging mentions, watching fans blame them for something they couldn't control. And now their head coach was doubling down on the very decision that was tearing the team apart. Leadership isn't just about drawing plays on a clipboard. It's about knowing when to admit you're wrong. But that's where Cleveland's leadership started to fail. Stefanski's refusal to even consider a change sent one message loud and clear: pride mattered more than progress. And that pride was poisoning everything, from the locker room to the field. Veteran players began speaking in coded language during interviews. One receiver said, "We trust the coaches for now." Another player, asked about the quarterback situation, responded, "I just play where I'm told to play." Those weren't random comments. They were warning signs, the kind that say, "We've lost faith, but we're trying to stay professional." Meanwhile, league executives were watching closely. Rumors started swirling that front office officials had grown concerned about Stefanski's decision-making, questioning whether his loyalty to Gabriel had crossed into personal bias. Even rival scouts, people with no stake in Cleveland's success, were baffled.
One NFC executive reportedly told a journalist, "You can't preach accountability and then start the wrong quarterback every week." It wasn't just about a football decision anymore. It was about credibility. Every time Stefanski defended Gabriel publicly, his words sounded less like confidence and more like desperation. Analysts began dissecting his press conferences the way fans break down game tape, searching for any hint of self-awareness, any sign he'd finally seen what the rest of the world already knew. But it never came. And the players? They noticed that too. When your coach refuses to listen, not to the fans, not to the film, not even to the locker room, the trust evaporates. Slowly at first, then all at once. That's exactly what was happening in Cleveland. The Browns weren't just losing games, they were losing belief in their leadership, in their vision, in the idea that someone at the top actually understood what was happening on the field. And as each day passed without change, one question grew louder, echoing across social media, press conferences, and even inside the team's own meeting rooms. If your coach can't see the truth staring him in the face, how can anyone believe he can lead you to a win? Because this wasn't just a quarterback problem anymore, it was a leadership crisis. And leadership crises don't stay contained for long. By the middle of the week, Cleveland wasn't just fighting to save their season, it was fighting to save their identity. What began as a quarterback controversy had evolved into something much darker, a crisis of direction. The kind of slow-motion collapse that every successful franchise fears, where the problem isn't talent, but leadership. The Browns had all the pieces, elite defenders, explosive receivers, a top-tier roster, and yet somehow they were imploding from the inside out. Every great organization eventually reaches this crossroads, the moment when talent alone isn't enough to win, and every decision, every stubborn choice begins to define the future. For Cleveland, that moment was now, because in a league built on accountability, the Browns were showing none. Players saw it. Fans saw it. Even analysts who rarely agreed on anything were united in disbelief. The film told the truth. Dillon Gabriel wasn't just underperforming, he was sinking. And Shedeur Sanders wasn't just the popular choice, he was the right one. Yet week after week, the franchise refused to act. It wasn't football logic anymore, it was pride disguised as strategy. Inside the locker room, players started talking less and staring more. Every practice rep from Shedeur became a quiet statement, sharp throws, calm presence, leadership that didn't need to be forced. It was as if the team was watching their future play out in slow motion while their coach refused to press play.
But it wasn't just Stefanski anymore. The front office had gone silent too. No statements, no explanations, just tension. When reporters asked about Shedeur's readiness, they got the same rehearsed answer. We believe in our starter. But nobody believed that anymore. Not the fans, not the analysts, not even the players hearing it repeated behind closed doors. And that's the tragedy of it all. The Browns weren't failing because they lacked talent. They were failing because they lacked courage. The courage to make the hard decision when it mattered most. Every great franchise is built on moments where someone steps up and says, "Enough, we're changing course." But Cleveland wasn't there yet. Instead, they were clinging to denial, even as the season slipped further away. The whispers around the league grew louder, that the Browns had become a cautionary tale in real time, a team so obsessed with proving itself right that it forgot how to win. Coaches from other teams reportedly used Cleveland as an example in meetings. This is what happens when you let ego run your depth chart. It was harsh, but it was true. And at the center of it all stood Shedeur Sanders, the calm in the storm. The young quarterback who hadn't said a word publicly, yet had the full attention of a city starving for something different. Every week he sat, the pressure built. Every mistake from Gabriel added fuel to the inevitable. It wasn't if the switch would happen anymore, it was when. Because there comes a point when even the most loyal fans stop defending the indefensible. When the media stops speculating and starts demanding answers. When the locker room stops waiting and starts choosing sides. And Cleveland had reached that point. The Browns were no longer a team managing a quarterback controversy.
They were a franchise teetering on the edge of implosion, one bad decision away from losing not just a season, but the faith of an entire city. And as one anonymous player reportedly told a reporter that week, everyone already knows who QB1 is. The only ones pretending otherwise are the ones afraid to admit they were wrong. That's the bigger picture. This was never just about a game or even a season. It was about a culture and the painful truth that sometimes the biggest opponent a team faces isn't across the field. It's standing on its own sideline. There's no more hiding it. The Browns aren't dealing with a quarterback dilemma. They're dealing with a full-scale identity crisis. Every fan, every analyst, every player with a pulse can see it. The question isn't if Shedeur Sanders deserves the job, it's why he hasn't been given it yet. And that's the kind of question that tears organizations apart from the inside out. Because when a team refuses to face the obvious, when leadership prioritizes ego over evidence, the damage doesn't just show up on the scoreboard, it seeps into everything. Practices feel heavier, sidelines feel colder, confidence turns into hesitation. And that's exactly where Cleveland is right now, a franchise paralyzed by pride. What makes this moment so defining isn't just the losing, it's the how. The Browns aren't being beaten by better teams, they're being beaten by their own decisions. Week after week, they have chosen comfort over competition, familiarity over fire, and now they're paying for it. The players know it, the fans feel it, the league is watching it unfold like a slow, painful car crash that everyone saw coming. But here's the thing. Seasons like this can still be salvaged. It only takes one decision, one moment of clarity, one act of courage. Starting Shedeur Sanders isn't just about fixing the offense, it's about fixing the culture. It's about proving that Cleveland can still recognize greatness when it's staring them in the face, that they're not too proud to admit when they got it wrong. Because make no mistake, the city already knows who their quarterback is. The locker room knows it, the fans chanting from the stands know it, the analysts breaking down film know it. The only ones pretending not to know are the ones sitting in the decision-maker chairs. And that's the unavoidable truth. Cleveland doesn't have a quarterback controversy, they have a leadership problem. And leadership problems don't just disappear. They force choices, tough, public, unavoidable choices. Sooner or later, the Browns will have to face theirs, because the longer they wait, the louder the noise will get. The players will grow colder, the fans will grow louder, and the season that could have been something special will turn into a cautionary tale for every team that let pride stand in the way of progress. So here it is, plain and simple. Start Shedeur, save the season, save the locker room, save your credibility. Because at this point, the Browns aren't just fighting for wins, they're fighting for respect. And if they can't make that choice soon, they won't just lose games, they'll lose the very faith that built this franchise in the first place.